Welcome, everyone, to another special edition of Amigos Friendly Wheels. We're here today with Dan and Jennifer Digmann, a couple who were brought together by their diagnoses of multiple sclerosis. From Capitol Hill to their podcast and blog, A Couple Takes on MS, they become powerful voices of advocacy in the MS community. Let's dive into their story. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd love it if you could share with me a little background about your history with MS.
You started it. I mean, you were diagnosed first.
I was diagnosed with MS 5 months after I graduated from college. I went to the University of Michigan Flint, graduated in May of 97, so it was more than 5 months. But anywho, in November of 1997, I started having I had been having symptoms like the entire senior year of college, numbness in my hands and numbness in my feet. My doctor could explain it away with bad shoes and lots of studying and writing papers and things. But then once I started my job, I had my eyes, I had double vision, and one of my left eye wouldn't move. My doctor couldn't explain that away. So she referred me to an ophthalmologist who then referred me to a neurologist, and then I was diagnosed with MS. And it was rather aggressive. At the time, there wasn't the disease modifying therapies, the medications that they used to treat MS. They weren't as many of them or as good, high quality as they are now. So I was treating the disease the best I could, but my disease progressed a little, but it still worked. And then I moved back in with my parents, and I lived with them and just kept going and doing. And I led a support group with the National MS Society in Flint. And then now Dan can tell his story.
I was 27 years old when I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2000, and it started just I had some like numbness, and I felt like, there's like tightness in my torso, and it was like really kind of a tight numbness. And yeah, the doctor started looking into it. That was in like probably in October of 99, and they had done lots of testing and stuff, and then eventually the testing and everything showed that they thought the radiology report came out in December saying most likely multiple sclerosis, just through my MRI and things like that. And then finally on Valentine's Day of 2000, I was diagnosed with the relapsing remitting MS. And really, it's just like my symptoms have been just like the numbness in my hands and feet and the tightness in my chest, which you eventually learn that it's like the Lhermitte's sign, and the Lhermitte's was when I had shocking going down my spine. So, I mean, it was, devastating news, but I think really the formal diagnosis was, as as weird as it sounds, is very welcoming, because at least then you knew what was causing the problems, and you knew that it could be treated. And, I, like Jennifer, at that point in time, there were just the three disease modifying therapies, but you get on them and do your best, but you just try and live the best life you can. And I think honestly, when I first started having the symptoms and everything, I had just started working at CMU. So then that was like January 3rd, and then Valentine's Day, you're diagnosed with MS. But I worked there for 17 years. And so just very, very fortunate that, the disease hasn't been as aggressive with me as it was with Jennifer. But, I got active and I started like an MS support group for the MS Society down in Alma, where I lived at the time. And then I got involved with the MS Society and doing volunteer work and things like that. And, then they happen to have that program in Frankenmuth that somebody was part of. And that's how it just kind of started from there. But I mean, that was pretty much my life in a nutshell before my diagnosis.
So I want to talk about how you guys met because your meet cute is such a charming story. Can you tell us about it?
It was 2002, and there were some women we were involved. I was involved with planning a program for women to, after I had been diagnosed with MS, kind of put all my goals and my hopes and things on hold because I was like, good heavens, I'm diagnosed with a permanent illness, a chronic illness. So this group of women, we decided we were going to have a program called Finding Your Buried Treasure. And it was to help you kind of get your bearings back after being diagnosed with an MS. But we didn't want to, no, we didn't do it on purpose, but we just forgot to put that it was for women only. And so when men started to register for the event, one of the women that was responsible, that was the staff person for the MS Society, reached out to Dan.
I had gotten the invitation and I thought it sounded interesting, but I live in Mount Pleasant. That's driving down to Frankenmuth, and I realize it's not that far, but still, you're thinking, well, that's hour and 20 minutes one way, and that's like taking up almost 2.5, 3 hours of my Saturday. But when the programs manager called me, I thought, okay, well, it sounded interesting, and I thought, well, sure, why not? And when I got down to Frankenmuth, the programs manager was at the registration table. I mean, there's just people all over. But talking with her, she had said, well, why don't you sit over? Because she pointed out to this table and she was just like, why don't you sit there? Because she'd asked if I'd ever had met Jennifer Urich. And I was like, no, but she says, well, you're both younger and you both lead MS groups and you may have some things to talk about and share because, similar ages. And, when I sat down at the table, because this was Jennifer's table, I waited for her to come up and I was just like, how can you not just be captivated by her? Or at least that was for me. And so, just throughout the whole meeting and the whole day, I wanted her to call on me and I wanted to impress her because I'm thinking, well, you're interested and stuff. And so, when the events were over, and I mean it was a great program, even for men, right? But the programs manager called me because she's like, we need to get more men at this event. And but when it was over, I mean, I hung back because I did not want that event to be the last time I, saw or connected with Jennifer. I mean, whether there was anything more there, but I mean, obviously you hoped there would be more.
And I felt the same way. And we were just talking afterwards, and I was young and brave, I guess. And so I gave Dan my phone number, and
Well, because I wanted to be coy about
oh, that's right.
I want, well, because you don't want to be this aggressive person because I'm not. So I just wanted to get her email, but she was the one that gave me her phone number too, which yeah,
And that hit it off, and then we just started dating and staying in contact.
So you're married, you both have MS, and you are each other's primary care partners. Can you tell me a little bit about how that can be helpful or even how it isn't?
Because we both have the disease, we both have experience leading support groups. We know what it's like to have a partner who doesn't understand. Oh, because it's going on inside your body, and you get so many wonky symptoms and things. So to have somebody that I can say, "Oh, my feet are numb," and he's like, "I get you," that's been helpful. It's just that Dan and I understand that, but he's never known me to walk because I started relying on my wheelchair. My legs started to give out on me. So he's never known me to walk, so he gets that. And, I understand back in the day we used to have to use disease modifying therapies that were shots, and you would have to take shots. And we understood what it's like to have to do that. And now we both treat our MS with more aggressive therapies. But again, it's really nice just to have somebody who gets it.
And I think that, I mean, just because, there's things that I deal with that she doesn't. And obviously, I don't know what it's like to not be able to walk. But at the same time, I think just that ability to relate or understand where that's coming from. And so I think in that sense, having that support is great. The downside is when one of us gets really sick,
Yeah.
then, and I mean, and we talk about it. It's just like I think it's worse when I get sick
Yeah.
because then I can no longer, I start running a fever. I don't have the strength to transfer her. And so that's, I don't want to say puts pressure on me. I mean, it's pressure because if she's sick, then, there's no, I can't, she doesn't, I can't, I get no assistance from her. But at least I'd be able to use like equipment and stuff to do transfers. But yeah, when I start running a fever, I think then when I get sick, it like inflames every MS symptom I have, and so then I can't walk, and so I think those are challenges that for as big of a blessing is that we both have MS and understand. It really hits hard when
Yeah,
one of us
that's
gets
true.
sick.
Thank you for sharing that, Dan. I think it's important to talk about the challenges that come with being somebody's primary care partner or caregiver, because the reality of the situation is that it's not always going to be easy. And it's important to have those conversations. Um, so I want to pivot a little bit and ask you about your involvement with advocacy.
I think that there's always, we got involved simply just uh, advocacy, really simple, just writing letters. And then we went on visits, we met legislators, and now we've gone to DC several times and we're still involved. So I think advocacy has been good. The National MS Society really makes it easy. But, Dan's a writer by trade, so we can write letters to legislators and write op-eds and things like that. So I think that there's always work to do, for as much as we've done.
I think that and I guess you always set goals. I think, when you start out, you're just like, well, this is what we want to do, and we want to, get involved with legislators. And then it's like, well, how else do we get it? And then it's like, we'll get more people involved and do more. And I think that's just where you're always, I don't want to say dis un, unfulfilled, but it's like you're always looking for new things. I think that's where, we say just to be your own best advocate. And like, because, we can sit here and just be in our house and complain about things or talk about things, but, there's nobody else that understands what we're going through. So we need to make sure they understand our perspectives and how things impact us, how this legislation is going to impact us as people living with MS. And so we just always want to continue to be present out there. I think that's the one thing. I'm going to steal your thunder because one thing that Jennifer, I love what I love about Jennifer, and she says that she's going to talk about the disease so much that they're going to cure it just to shut her up. And
Absolutely.
I think that that's so we're just always looking for new ways to get involved and to get more people involved.
And not everyone has a caregiver who's as supportive as I do, and Dan still drives, and while we are able to get out and do MS walks or MS bike rides, just to be active as we can. And not everybody can write, or not everyone feels comfortable speaking to legislators, yeah, certainly in our MS community. So we always, we have members where we think, oh, we're going to do this on behalf of whoever in the group doesn't feel comfortable doing it, but think of that person. We want to think of our groups.
So advocacy and accessibility really do go hand in hand. So as far as accessibility is concerned, what are the things you want to see improved?
I think the most important thing to me, and I don't want to dabble in politics, that's not my intent, but I don't want anything that we have to go backwards. You know, that the advancements, the legislation, things that do think about accessibility. I don't want that to go backwards. I want buildings to continue to be ADA compliant. I want the ADA to continue to exist. I People need to build buildings to think about wheelchairs and power chairs and people who can't deal with barriers. So that's number one for me.
I think for, then for me and for us, I mean, that when buildings are built or when things are remodeled, they really need to think about having handicap accessible family restrooms. I think,
Yes.
when we go places, um, if they're, so even if they have like male, female restrooms, we when we travel, I mean that rest areas that don't have family restrooms, I have to go into the women's restroom to help Jennifer. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's not just me, we're not the only people that deal with
Mhm.
this. And when we're talking about the caregiving, because, we can talk about multiple sclerosis, but I mean, when it gets into the world of of caregiving, you have, husbands taking care of their wives, wives taking care of their husbands, and it's just like, I think that's where they really that and that has to be handicap accessible, like truly accessible with a tall toilet, grab bars, and not
Mhm.
just say, I think you go to rest areas that have accessible things where they throw grab bars into a standard stall. So I think, for us, I think just the continued with, more focus on caregivers and family restrooms, because I think that's the one thing that really keeps people with accessibility needs is, to be able to go out, because how many times do you go out with friends and go to parties, go to places that don't have accessible bathrooms? Well, then that cuts your time with friends short because you have to go home,
I
right?
had saw something about accessible bathrooms, and now they're not all the same. And this person was blind, and she was talking about how just because it's a bathroom, uh, being blind, not every bathroom's set up the same. And now it's nice if they have like a braille guide or something. So she knows what to expect. Where is the toilet? Where is the sink? So she's not, so there is, like you said, so many facets of disability. I just want, and I'm sure Dan's the same way, I'm sure most people with disabilities, we want to be included in the conversation. I know the phrase is overused, but we want a seat at the table. We don't want people to forget about disabilities because we're a huge population.
That is such a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Since I know you use your A Couple Takes on MS platform to advocate and amplify the voices of those in the disabled community, can you tell me a little bit about how you got started with podcasting and blogging?
As we talked about like just goals and doing things and more, it's like, well, we knew, when we started the blog, that was from a friend encouraging us because, I always felt that, when I was first diagnosed with MS, I wanted to see a voice of a man who can, when you're talking EMS affects women, more women than men. I wanted to see a man who has MS, who's continuing to work, who's continuing, so it's like, how do we get that voice out there? And then when Jennifer and I got married, it's like, well, then, okay, then it was a voice of a woman with a disability in a wheelchair. And so then all of a sudden, then we're married. And how do you do this? And a friend of ours says, you guys need to do a blog. Well, we started that, and then you just look for new things. Well, then podcasts just got huge. And it's just like we just wanted to have our voices in there. I mean, we're, just as far as everyone has different needs and different interests, and we're just like, we just wanted to be able to have something that's more approachable. I mean, obviously I write and stuff, but it's a lot easier to throw a podcast on and listen to that while you're doing the dishes rather than sitting and reading something. I get that.
And it's a lot easier to talk than it is to type or to grammatically. I can say whatever I want, but when you write it, you're like, oh, that looks atrocious, and you want to fix it. But I think it's just easier to talk. And then we've met so many, it's a really crappy disease, but a great way to meet people. And we met so many people that are willing to come and talk with us and share their insights because they they all have them. So I think the podcast, I look at Dan like it's his baby, but it,
Yours too.
it's mine too. It's an easy way to stay current and stay involved. So
That it gives other people the opportunity to share their voices. And I think that's when we started, it was just Jennifer and me sitting around talking because we had those perspectives. But it's like we wanted to talk to other people to get their perspectives on MS, and we could obviously throw our commentary or our perspectives in there. But it's really we're very humble. We don't like talking about ourselves. We talk about ourselves, but it's like we just want to be part of the conversation. We don't want to be the focus of. So it's easier to then get more people involved. We have another one coming up here with a great author, somebody that's doing something magnificent. And you're just like, well, you want to help encourage and share their story.
I love that you guys aim to do that with your podcast. I think it's so inspiring. So my next question, have you seen any changes since you began doing all of this?
it's just the fact that it's so much more present. It's in conversation so much more. Dan and I went to graduate school together, and we were studying, and part of what I focused on was MS, well, not MS, just disability in the literature and in the public eye. And it really wasn't there. And now, good heavens, you watch a commercial on television, you just watch TV, and probably I would be surprised if in an hour worth of commercials you didn't see someone in a wheelchair at least once or twice. That disability is so much more seen. So I'd say that's something that's changed.
I think then that it's people who have disabilities are more willing to talk about it and be in public and do things, whereas like it used to be, people would just stay home or hide. Or, when I was diagnosed, it's like, we weren't supposed to exercise. Now people are supposed to exercise with MS. And so I think just being present, being out there, showing and being more vocal. I think that it's like when we go out in public and just to be able to, I love it when people talk to Jennifer and not like, if we're together, that people are more apt to talk to her if she's the one. We go to a hotel to check in, and if she's the one saying this is what it is, well, then, you love it when they talk to her and they don't look to me like I'm the one with all the answers because I'm not in a wheelchair. I think that but we're nowhere close to where we need to be on that. I think it's just that continued education because, it's like, or when, because then by the same token, Jennifer can go in and say, I'm checking in for, Digman, and then she's got the credit card out. And if they start to ask me things, and then one time I'm just like, well, I don't know, why don't you ask her? I think it's just like, just and you don't want to be rude about it, but it's just educating people. I think it's that people with MS, people with disabilities, are taking that more seriously in terms of being your own best advocate. That's like, it's part of our job, unintentional, but it's part of our job to educate others because, I think about like with our disease, we don't understand it and we're living with it. So why would I expect somebody who's not living with the disease to know what it is. So then it's up to me to educate. And I think well, I don't want to educate, but but at the same time, I didn't want the disease to begin with. So we gotta, we've got to do it. So
If we can talk about it to educate them, then and we have that ability and that opportunity. That's a gift that MS has given us. Unwelcome disease again, but a good gift.
So, what would you say is the most important thing to you when it comes to your MS?
just keeping everything in perspective. I think there was when we were first into the, working, doing blogs and stuff, and there was another writer with MS, and his blog was "Perspective is Everything," and it is. It's just, that played off like when I was diagnosed, the day I was formally diagnosed. You're just bawling, sobbing, and stuff. This is the worst thing ever. But then you wake up the next day, and it's like I'm the same guy I was yesterday. I just have a formal diagnosis, and I think it's just keeping that in perspective of like, you know, things change. I'm the same person. There's going to be developments, there's going to be progression, what have you, but it's like everything happens. We grow older, and even if you don't have multiple sclerosis and you turn 53, you're going to be different than you were when you were 25. That's just stuff. And so it's just like the MS is just part of that, of which I have to deal with. But then you think of people who have other diagnoses, and just other life experiences that changes them too. And I think it's just keeping things in perspective and not giving MS more control or more power than it deserves. Because, did I drop this because I had MS? Maybe, but maybe because I, got distracted with something else. And it's just like, well, it happens. And so I just think don't give MS more power.
And I mean, certainly my caregiver, my husband's top of the list, my family, they're top of the list. But my wheelchair is really, really important. And, we could talk for hours about flying and how important it is to give away my chair and what that is, but just how important accessibility equipment is. I think that's something that how important it is that you have access to the equipment that can make your life possible, that can get you out and about to leave the house.
Jennifer, since you brought up your wheelchair and the importance of mobility and accessibility equipment in general, I know you used an Amigo in the past. Can you tell me how that helped you in your day-to-day life?
When I was a scooter, like an Amigo, that was so helpful because I could walk, but with the disease I couldn't walk very long, and so that helped save my energy if I wanted to go shopping because I had the kind of van I still drove, and I could lift the Amigo with a strap and a hook and put that. It just got me out and about to have the Amigo, and the power chair I'm sitting in right now I got from Amigo. So I mean, this is current, I just got a chair. It's 2025, maybe 3 years ago, from somebody that works at Amigo, and that company has been uber important to me because Jeff from way back when, and like the early 2000s, he helped me and just mobility equipment. So just just to keep, I don't have functioning legs right now, but that's why my Amigo and my power chair, and that's so important.
Can I share the Altini story?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
can I
love,
show you? Can I show you this? Okay, just a
yes.
sec. So I had written for the MS magazine back in the day. I had written an article about our wedding, and this I'll zoom in, but that was the photo, right? Well, then maybe about like a week, 2 weeks after the magazine came out, we got a copy of that magazine with a note from Altini, and we just our heads were blown that it's like A, that he gets the magazine, B, that he recognizes from that photo that that was an Amigo, and that the founder and CEO and everything of Amigo was writing to us. And you're just like, and seeing that. I mean, because that's humbling, where you're just thinking that, and that we're sitting here today talking with you I mean, because this is, those are the things that you just don't see happening. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's just Amigo's been, you know, I
Huge.
mean, I want to say lifesaver, but like, totally life enhancer, that it's just like, because without this, we wouldn't go anywhere.
No. Mm.
Or I would have to put, when I see other caregivers having, when they push with a manual wheelchair, I'm just grateful that Jennifer has a power chair, that we've never had to um, worry about that, because with the MS, I don't have the strength to do, that kind of pushing. So it's been a blessing on so many levels.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with me. I'm so glad that you've had such a good experience with Amigo. And two, I think it's so cool that Al reached out to you after seeing the article about your wedding. I think that's amazing. So, and one last question. Do you have any advice or pearls of wisdom you want to share with anyone watching who might have MS?
It is exactly what Dan said, that just power chairs, Amigos have been lifesavers and lifelines to keep me. I know without my chair, I couldn't be engaged in the community, and I wouldn't be able to meet legislators. I wouldn't be able to go and be part of the community. So I think that's important. It's just how crucial the power chairs and the equipment that Amigo has been.
And I think too, for anybody who's struggling with MS, it's like, keep yourself engaged with other
Hmm.
people, and and just remember, you're not going it alone. I mean, there's like, nearly 1 million people in the US living with multiple sclerosis, and it's not like, I don't want to say in the old days, but when I was diagnosed in 2000, you didn't have the online communities on Facebook, so the social media, to keep yourself connected and just to continue to put yourself out there. I mean, if I didn't get out there, I would never have started an MS support group. I never would have gone to Frankenmuth to Finding Your Buried Treasure. And I'm not saying you need to get involved and stay involved so you can find a soulmate. It's just that had we just closed ourselves off, none of that would have happened. So it's like, find the support, go out and see. Um, Stupid fly. Well, it's like it was flying around the house. And we closed the office door. And of course, it's like stored with us. But it's like, yeah, it's just like continue to be involved, and it can be scary. It's like it's especially scary if you're trying to do it alone. So just reach out and find the help that you can get, and find the communities, find other people with amigos, find other people, with support groups, with something. So
Dan and Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story with us. Your strength and insight and advocacy are truly inspiring. So thanks for sitting down and talking with me today about it. And to anyone watching, thank you for tuning in.